IPVanish protects every device you own. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV. If it connects to the internet, it should be protected. IPVanish encrypts your connection and masks your IP address, helping keep your browsing private at home and on public Wi-Fi. And with no device limits, one account covers everything. Stream with added privacy. Browse securely. Connect with confidence. Right now, save 83% off the 2-year plan. Get started today at ipvanish.com/audio and take control of your privacy with IPVanish. IPVanish protects every device you own. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV. If it connects to the internet, it should be protected. IPVanish encrypts your connection and masks your IP address, helping keep your browsing private at home and on public Wi-Fi. And with no device limits, one account covers everything. Stream with added privacy. Browse securely. Connect with confidence. Online protection made simple. Right now, save 83% off the 2-year plan. Get started today at ipvanish.com/audio and take control of your privacy with IPVanish.
Welcome to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast, the show that explores the background of Tolkien's amazing world from the very beginning. So we're finally at the party, and it's more than a party, it's basically a fair that was put on by one hobbit for the enjoyment of everybody else there. And Tolkien puts in the work to make sure that we know who is at this party. It's basically everyone in the Shire plus extra. And then he goes into even further detail about who are the closest members of this group that get to go to the special dinner of 144 people, a gross total number, and all of that. And you might be wondering, why is he so insistent this early in the book to feed us these details? What is the point of it? And why, as we get through this section of this chapter, does everything seem so busy and dense and full? Well, there's a solution to that. And this is something that actually just dawned on me this morning. After I already went through this section, I've done a little bit of research, I mark up all my notes, and then I think about it for a few days. And it occurred to me that the tone of the text, not just the tone of the text, the pacing of the text matches the excitement of the party. Have you ever gone to a party, a big event, a celebration, a concert, some sort of major event, and you looked forward to it for weeks, and then you get there, and it's as if the night just takes off on its own. Before you know it, 6-8 hours have gone by, and it's time to go home. This happens to little kids all the time. They get lost in the fun of the thing they're doing, and then all of a sudden, it's over. It felt like it was going to last a lot longer, but because you were lost in that moment, the excitement, the pace of it all, everything accelerates throughout the night until it comes to a complete stop. And that's exactly what happens in this section of the book. And Tolkien has modeled that not just in the narrative, not just in telling us about the events and the way the people at this event felt and the things that were happening, but in the actual pacing of the words on the page itself. Now, I'll point this out as we get through it, but keep that in mind. There is a reason why he draws this out so much, and it's because it's coming to a climax. The moment Bilbo puts on the ring and disappears and says goodbye to everyone. And it's also important that we note that all of these important people were here at this exact moment. He's done everything he can to remove any ambiguity of the joke that he just played on everyone, but also their awareness that he has now said his goodbyes and is gone. But of course, the details are important, so come with me as we take a look at the party and the build-up to when Bilbo said his goodbyes. This paragraph begins with Bilbo Baggins called it a party, but it was really a variety of entertainments rolled into one. Basically, they're describing a fair. And Tolkien explains the very real logistics about how this works. A very few were overlooked by accident in discussing how many people were invited to the party and the fact that Bilbo spent all this time sending out letters, but of course, sometimes you just miss somebody. It happens. But even then, they turned up and it didn't matter. Everybody knew that everyone was invited, and sometimes people make mistakes, and nobody held it against him. Everybody understood that this was supposed to be a big event for everybody to come to. And we get these funny little notes about how Bilbo met everyone at the gate, and he gave away presents and sundry. The latter were to those that went back and came back again in order to get more presents, but he noticed them coming in again, so he gave them sundry. Now, sundry is another one of those words that's pretty antiquated, at least where I live, and many of us wouldn't understand what that means, but of course it's Tolkien. It means something very intentionally. So we know what presents are. These are the nicer things that he was giving to people intentionally, but then when somebody would show back up a second time and he would catch them, he would give them various items that were not important enough to be mentioned individually. This is sundry. Think about opening up your miscellaneous drawer in your kitchen and pulling out some paper clips or something and being like, okay, here's your gift. Here's some gum. They're just kind of minor items that aren't worth mentioning. And this section of the book is actually a treasure trove for details that we learn about hobbits that we didn't know before. If we read The Hobbit, we knew that they had multiple meals a day and they had different names for each of the meals. There was, a dinner and a supper, and that's just how hobbits work. Well, hobbits also in their society give presents to others on their birthday. They don't get presents from everybody. And this is a thing that still happens in some societies. As an American, it's typical for us to give presents to the person whose birthday it is, and you typically give them something nicer, usually not sundries, right? But things are opposite in Hobbiton, and Bilbo was putting on a party for everyone else, and that wasn't even enough of a gift in itself. He had to actually give them other presents, which continues to reinforce that point that Bilbo is not miserly. He's very generous with his wealth. And the presents for the children who show up are especially wonderful. And this again gives us this concept of Bilbo being somebody who's getting older, but has a heart for the children, which was mentioned in the previous section of this chapter. And the toys are amazing to these kids, things that they'd never seen before. Some are even magical. And it's spelled funny. There's a dash after the I, magi-col. Again, Tolkien is reinforcing the compound word here, and the emphasis is magic. And that's something that is very new to these Hobbit children. They don't get gifts like this every day, if ever. And there's a reason for that. These gifts were ordered and delivered from the mountain and from Dale. And if you remember from The Hobbit, the Lonely Mountain, Erebor, is the mountain that Smaug was in. It's the mountain that he helped the dwarves take back. And they have come back into their own and relit the kiln, and they've been crafting things again and all of that. And the city of Dale was rebuilt by Bard and his people. And Bilbo here is putting in orders for very special items from these locations, and they were delivered across, the wilds to the Shire. So Bilbo is effectively the opposite of what most of our grandparents ended up being at some point in their lives, where they would remember like that thing you were into when you were 5 years old, but now you're 15, and they still give you cartoon things, and you're like, nah, I'm into rock bands now, or whatever age you were and what you were into. You guys get the point. But Bilbo, on the other hand, is giving them things that they've never seen before. These are some of the coolest gifts and toys they could possibly ever have. And then the pace continues to build from here. We're told that every guest had been welcomed and was finally inside the gate, and then and we get this list of everything that was happening at this big event. Songs, dances, music, games, and of course, food and drink, including 3 official meals. This party went on long enough to cover 3 different meal times for the hobbits, which isn't hard to do because they have a lot of meal times, but it went from lunch to tea to dinner or supper, so potentially 4. But then he even says that those times were able to be marked mostly because that's when more people were sitting down and eating, but it was a big event and people were just kind of eating the whole time, snacking on stuff, enjoying, having fun, singing along and dancing and mingling with each other. And this went on from elevensies, which is Hobbit talk for 11 a.m., until 6:30, and then that's when the fireworks started, because it was finally dark enough. And we're told, again, that the fireworks were by Gandalf. And they weren't just brought by him. He didn't just buy fireworks from, say, dwarven craftsmen who were making them. No, Gandalf makes these fireworks himself. And there's a reason for that. Gandalf can make fireworks like nobody else has ever seen. But we're reminded that his fireworks were not the only ones there. In fact, they distributed, and here we get another list: squibs, crackers, back wrappers, sparklers, torches, dwarf candles, elf fountains, goblin barkers, and thunderclaps. And I know what, say, a cracker might be or a sparkler might be, but what is a dwarf candle? What is an elf fountain? What is a goblin barker or a thunderclap? Those sound amazing, even though those aren't the most amazing fireworks that Gandalf has brought. And on top of this, we're told that all of these were superb, but the art of Gandalf continues to get better with age. And this implies something. We know from The Hobbit, and we know from the lore, that Gandalf is a Maiar. He is an angelic-like being, one of the minor ones, but still very powerful. And he came from Valinor. He's ageless. He's timeless. He existed as one of the Ainur before the world even was in existence. And he will continue to exist until the world is done. And yet, in his physical human body, he can still continue to get better at things. He can learn. He can improve. And as we know, because he's in a mortal body, that body can also die. It can also be cold or be hurt. He has emotions, and those feelings and thoughts, those are all very real. Just because he comes from a stock of being that is well beyond hobbits and men or even dwarves or elves doesn't mean that he's not like all of us in very interesting ways. So why make a point to note that here? Well, if you're somebody who is reading just this book or had read just The Hobbit, you wouldn't know that Gandalf is a Maiar. This is not something that is revealed in the text until you get much later in the stories, and even then is still shrouded in a certain level of mystery about what that actually means. We are supposed to conceive of Gandalf in this moment as if he is a human wizard, somebody who works the same way anybody else does, but seems to have more of a grasp on the craft of magic and the making of magical things than most other people. This has not been revealed to us yet, and we're supposed to expect that Gandalf is limited, like human beings are, meaning, and for all of us who, and hopefully this isn't a spoiler for all of us who know the book or who have watched the movies, Gandalf can die. And yeah, it's a surprise from a character development direction and a story arc direction, but it's not going to be a surprise as in, oh, wait, I thought he was an angelic being. How is this possible? If that makes sense. Because we are being taught to relate to Gandalf as something like a human here early enough in the story, that means that there will be tension. That when things seem dangerous, we're not just going to expect that Gandalf can just swoop in and save the day, because sometimes he can't. And that's a very real thing. And then we get descriptions of all the fireworks that he makes, or at least a lot of them. And I love this. I'm going to read through this whole entire section because these are great. And we see some of these represented in the film, and they're similar and they're not exactly the same, but the film does play off of what we get here. So let's just go through the list. There were rockets like a flight of scintillating birds singing with sweet voices. There were green trees with trunks of dark smoke, their leaves open like a whole spring unfolding in a moment, and their shining branches dropped, glowing flowers down upon the astonished hobbits, disappearing with a sweet scent just before they touched their upturned faces. There were fountains of butterflies that flew glittering into the trees. There were pillars of colored fires that rose and turned into eagles, or sailing ships, or a phalanx of flying swans. There was a red thunderstorm and a shower of yellow rain. There was a forest of silver spears that sprang suddenly into the air with a yell like an embattled army and came down again into the water with a hiss like 100 hot snakes. Now, these would be amazing to see in our own world. We have some very impressive fireworks at this point in history. They've been refined for a long time, but we don't have things that do some of what these fireworks do. This is clearly magic. But if we look a little bit closer at each of these, they're inspired by something in this world. This is not just a description of fireworks. This is a description of things that happened in this world. Now let's take a look at them. Scintillating birds singing with sweet voices. That feels like the countryside of the Shire. Green trees with trunks of dark smoke. Leaves opening up like a spring unfolding in a moment. Their shining branches dropping flowers down to the astonished hobbits. This feels like the beautiful places of the world, including places like the Shire, or possibly a place like Lothlorien or Rivendell, places where the elves live. And then we get another beautiful nature image, fountains of butterflies that flew glittering into the trees. Okay, butterflies, beautiful images of nature. But then things start to change. Pillars of colored fire that rose and turned into eagles, or sailing ships, or a phalanx of flying swans. Okay, so now we're moving on to birds, but the eagles are important, right? If you've read through The Hobbit, we know that the great eagles are very powerful and they watch over Middle-earth. And if we know the lore, we know that they were created by the leader of the angelic beings, the leader of the Valar, Manwë, and they basically work for him, like his eyes and ears over in Middle-earth. And sailing ships, phalanx of flying swans, images of sailing ships and swans, that feels kind of like elven boats or Númenóreans maybe. A red thunderstorm and a yellow rain. I'm not sure exactly what to picture about that, but that feels sinister. A forest of silver spears that sprang suddenly into the air with a yell like an embattled army. Silver spears being thrown into the air. How many battles in Middle-earth featured rows of soldiers with spears tossing them into their enemies by the Third Age? Each of these, in Gandalf's mind, might actually relate to real-world events and things from the history of this world, but it also gives us a glimpse as a new reader of this book that the entire world is not like the Shire, and the history of this world is filled with mysterious other things. And then we get the culmination of all of these, the one that's most featured in the films, but it happens differently. In the films, it's Merry and Pippin who accidentally set off the dragon firework. But here, it's Gandalf, and it is part of the plan. The lights went out. A great smoke went up. It shaped itself like a mountain seen in the distance and began to glow at the summit. It spouted green and scarlet flames. Does that sound like anybody? Out flew a red golden dragon, not life-size, but terribly lifelike. Fire came from his jaws, his eyes glared down. There was a roar, and he whizzed 3 times over the heads of the crowd. They all ducked, and many fell flat on their faces. The dragon passed like an express train, turned a somersault, and burst over Bywater with a deafening explosion. This is clearly Smaug. This is clearly, in kind of a fun little way, a way of exposing all of the hobbits to the thing that Bilbo already dealt with decades previous. And yet, it doesn't strike Bilbo as scary or terrifying. In fact, he expected it. He follows up and says, "That is the signal for supper." He knew it was coming. This was part of the celebration, and maybe even something that he had asked Gandalf to do intentionally in order to reinforce the stories that he had been telling that people were making fun of him for. And all of these hobbits had dove down into the ground in order to take cover over this dragon. And yet this is just a dragon firework. This isn't even a real dragon. And then Bilbo knows that bringing up supper was enough to cheer them all up. So they get back up. They forget that they were scared. They realize, oh, it's just a firework, and they move on. And then this is where the group, the massive group of like the entire Shire gets divided down into a very special family dinner party group. 12 dozen, 144 of the closest hobbits to Bilbo, or others. Gandalf's there as well, of course. And it gets explained later that the number 144 was important because it was the sum total of Bilbo and Frodo's ages. And it just coincidentally happened to be the same number as a gross, which was used for, objects or food, but not people, because that would be insulting. But Bilbo notices the comparison and brings it up later and thinks it's kind of funny. And we're told that in order to hit this number, he included a lot of the families that he was familiar with, a lot of the ones he was closer to, but then also some of the ones he wasn't, like the Sackville Bagginses. And the pacing continues to pick up. Notice we're getting more lists, and lists are very quick to read. This and that, and this and that, and this and that. We also get some details here that, and there's another archaic word I want to point out. Bringing up young hobbits took a lot of provender. Provender? I don't know how to pronounce that because it looks like provender to me, but it's also a word that I, again, don't use. This is archaic. But of course, it is exactly the right word to use in this situation. It meant food, but over the years, it became more and more used for miscellaneous animal feed, like the kind of food you just put in front of a child because they're hungry and they just want to keep eating, and treating the children as if they are being raised like farm animals is kind of a funny connection here, but there's a reason why he chose that word, right? Now, we get through this list of all of these different sides of his family, and I'm just going to go quickly through the list here. We have Bagginsons and Boffins, Tooks and Brandybucks, and notice they're being grouped together. Bagginsons and Boffins, those are the respectable ones. Tooks and Brandybucks, those are the ones who are a little bit weird. Then there were various Grubbs. So this is a relation to Bilbo's grandmother's side of the family. Chubbs, a connection to the Took grandfather side of his family. Burrowses, Bulgers, Bracegirdles, Brockhouses, Goodbodies, Hornblowers, and Proudfoots. And notice the way all of these names sound. They all feel like they're words that were designed around the aspects of this type of family, or maybe something they did or somewhere they lived. And there's this aspect to them where they feel very cute and hobbity, but also very real. Like these could be actual last names. Now, we also find out, of course, that the Sackville Bagginses were also there, Otho and Lobelia, and they were not fans of Bilbo. They were very put out when he returned, and they couldn't claim his property and all of his items for themselves. And it even says here, they disliked Bilbo and detested Frodo. But so magnificent was the invitation card, written in gold ink, that they had felt it was impossible to refuse. This, again, feels like a very real thing. How many of us have had or had to deal with, maybe not even in our own families, maybe other families, certain types of people who treat status as if it's more important than anything else. And so getting a very fancy card in gold ink means, oh, well, you absolutely have to be there. Yeah, they're those people. It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now, you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable, and I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ringslore.
IPVanish protects every device you own. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV. If it connects to the internet, it should be protected. IPVanish encrypts your connection and masks your IP address, helping keep your browsing private at home and on public Wi-Fi. And with no device limits, one account covers everything. Stream with added privacy. Browse securely. Connect with confidence. Right now, save 83% off the 2-year plan. Get started today at ipvanish.com/audio. and take control of your privacy with IPVanish.
And then the pace continues to quicken. We're told that everybody here is dreading the after dinner speech. Sometimes Bilbo would break out into poetry, or if he had had a few drinks, he might even tell stories of his journey, specifically being the one that happens in The Hobbit. But the speech was coming, and they were ready for it, and they were hoping it would be short and sweet. And we're also told that because Bilbo fed them so well, they were in a tolerant mood, and they were in the phase of eating where they were filling up the corners, meaning nibbling extra little bites here and there because the food is so good they don't want to stop eating. I feel like we've all been there as well. But then we get the speech, and this is another thing that is done fairly well in the movie. So now that everybody's all full and comfortable, he begins his speech. "My dear people." And they shout, "Hear, hear, hear." And you get a lot of call and response back and forth between the group as he talks. And Bilbo makes his way over to a chair underneath this illuminated tree, which works as like a little stage for him to stand on so people can see him better. And we get this interesting description. The light of the lanterns fell on his beaming face, meaning that he was smiling and happy. The golden buttons shone on his embroidered silk waistcoat, and we're giving a glimpse of what he's wearing, showing that he's wealthy. He has golden buttons on his waistcoat. They could all see him standing, waving one hand in the air. The other was in his trouser pocket. Notice that detail. One hand in the air, waving at everyone to get their attention. The other in his pocket. And in the movie, we can even see him kind of fumbling around with the ring in his pocket, like he's just kind of playing with it. But it doesn't say that here. It does seem to imply that, though. But we're not there yet. Then we get his speech. And I'm going to go through each of the quotes from Bilbo himself and throw in some other little details here as we get through this. "My dear Baggins and Boffins," he began again, "my dear Tooks and Brandybooks, and Grubbs and Chubbs, and Burrowses, and Hornblowers and Bulgers, Brace Girdles, Good Bodies, Brockhouses, and Proudfoots." And then, of course, "Proud Feet," just like what happens in the film. One of them yells out, "It's Proud Feet, not Proudfoots." "Proudfoots," repeated Bilbo, because he doesn't change with what they want. He states it how he wants. "Also, my good Sackville Bagginses that I welcome back at last to Bag End. Today is my 111th birthday. I am 11-1 today." And of course, they all cheer, and this is kind of similar to what happens in the movie. "I hope you are all enjoying yourselves as much as I am." And of course, they respond, mostly say yes, some say no, probably just having fun in the crowd. And then we're even told that over in the corner, some of the Tooks and Brandybucks supposed that Uncle Bilbo was done with his speech and they started playing music and dancing again. But Bilbo was not done. He seized a horn from a youngster nearby and blew 3 loud hoots. Notice the pacing here. It's as if the whole entire text is like, okay, get on with it. Okay, let's finish. Let's move on to the next thing. But then Bilbo says, "I shall not keep you long." Cheers from all the assembly. "I have called you all together for a purpose." And there was something about the way he said this that made an impression. And this is the first time through this entire section that it's as if the train slows down and goes, wait, what? Something else is going on here. And in fact, the author, or Tolkien, notes that 1 or 2 of the Tooks pricked up their ears, implying that the thing he was about to do or mention will be odd. It will not be something that the common hobbits expect, but the Tooks, being the ones who are a little bit more out there, have a little bit more sense of what's about to happen. Indeed, for 3 purposes. First of all, to tell you that I am immensely fond of you all, and that 11 years is too short a time to live among such excellent and admirable hobbits. And they all, of course, cheer. And then the famous line, which of course is included in the film, which confuses everybody as to whether this is a compliment or not, and who is he actually talking about. "I don't know half of you as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve." And this, of course, confuses some of them, but this is a wonderful example of Tolkien playing with words and just showcasing that he is an expert when it comes to stringing language together in order to craft it into something really interesting. So I would love your interpretations of that line and what that actually means. My sense of it is that there's a segment of you who I should like less, but I'm still generous and nice to you anyway. That's my sense of it, but let me know what you think about that. Then he moves on to his second point. "Secondly, to celebrate my birthday," people cheer again, "I should say our birthday, for it is, of course, also the birthday of my heir and nephew Frodo. He comes of age and into his inheritance today." And so This is another reason why he has all of these people here, so that when he disappears, there can be no confusion. Nobody can step up and say, well, he didn't really tell everybody that Frodo was his heir and it's not official. No, it is official. He has signed the papers, but now he is making an official announcement that nobody can miss this. Frodo is his heir. He is of age. He is an adult. And he can take care of all of my things and all of my property. They all go to him. So Sackville Bagginses, chill out. You're not getting Bag End. Then he says, together we score 144. Your numbers were chosen to fit this remarkable total. One gross, if I may use the expression. And the mood continues to sour because, first of all, hobbits are very proper. They don't want to be called part of one gross, not because the word gross is gross, but because this is used for food and items and we're people. But also, hey, did you just include us because you were trying to hit a number, not because you actually like us? And so there's a little bit of truth around that, but I think the real reason is mostly because he wants this to be official and everyone to have witnessed it. Then he says this. It is also, if I may be allowed to refer to ancient history, the anniversary of my arrival by barrel at Esgaroth on the Long Lake. So he did it. He brought up his trip. He brought up his adventure there and back again to the Lonely Mountain. And this was just after he and the dwarves were able to escape the elves by hiding in barrels and going down the river. And that was on his birthday, even though it wasn't really brought up in The Hobbit. And he continues that sentence, though the fact that it was my birthday slipped my memory on that occasion. I was only 51 then. 51 was relatively young for a hobbit. And birthdays did not seem so important. The banquet was very splendid, however, though I had a bad cold at the time. I remember and could only say, "Thank you very much." I now repeat it more correctly. Thank you very much for coming to my little party. And this is a callback. If you are somebody who's read The Hobbit, then this works a little bit like fan service from way back when these books were published. Tolkien was playing on your memories of that other story and reminding us that this Bilbo is still that same Bilbo. He's just older. And the crowd responds to this because they see that he's now talking about his old stories again. And now they're afraid that he's going to start telling poems or singing songs, or this speech is going to go on forever. And that's not why they're there. Clearly, they're there for selfish reasons to enjoy the day rather than be nice to Bilbo. But he goes on and says, thirdly, and finally, I wish to make an announcement. And you can tell Bilbo understands the mood of the crowd. He understands their motivations. He understands that many of them, although kind and good people, are ultimately selfish. They're there for the entertainment and the food. And so he plays a final joke on them. He spoke this last word, the word announcement, so loudly and suddenly that everyone sat up who still could. That's a little funny because some of them are so full, right? And notice the pacing here has been fast until just about this moment. And this is when Bilbo hits them with the thing that will stop everyone in their tracks. I regret to announce that, though, as I said, 11 years is far too short a time to spend among you. This is the end. I am going. I am leaving now. Goodbye. This week's bonus episode, I'll be digging into, or at least this is the plan right now. I haven't recorded it yet, but I think there's probably enough information for all the different little towns and locations in the Shire since we did kind of an overview last time. So I'm going to be digging into a little bit more about each of those locations. So join me on the bonus episode if you like. Patreon.com/LOTR Lorecast. You can join up there like these wonderful people who signed up just in the last week. Kat O, Cyril P, Doss S, Cody B, Nick B, Nasty Hobbitses, and William, thank you so much for your support. And shout outs to all of our VIP patrons. Let's see if I can get through this list. Fulcrum, David S, Daniel Nightweaver, Capenna, Richard J, TJT, AK Music Lover, Barney D, Azel Rezel, Lori B, Mason Weathertop, Top Jezzer, Gimli a Break, Divine Madman, Rosie Rose, Ginger Fury, Huon is my hero, Aldarian was right, Averial, Party Snack, Single Ent looking for Ent Wives, Malt, I'm just calling you Malt from now on, oh man, I messed that one up, Norwegianus, Balrogius, Hunterus, Bruce W, Artemis, Kirisi, Das S, we're just saying DOS S. Thank you so much. That's everybody on the list. Also, we have a new review that came in on Apple Podcasts. If you leave these in the US, I'll read them out on a future episode because I can see those. But if you would like to help out wherever you are, reviews, 5-star reviews, positive comments, all of that stuff is extremely helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And thank you to the Rock and Roll Rev, who writes, best podcast ever. I started listening to this podcast about 2 months ago at work. I needed a break from listening to the same 3 bands over and over again, and being a giant Lord of the Rings fan, I searched up my podcast app for Lord of the Rings, and there it was, like finding a lost ring at the bottom of a lake. I put it on and was immediately filled with power. Like most people that are fans, I read the trilogy and The Hobbit as a kid, but was unable to understand the Silmarillion. Robots is the voice and mind for telling these stories and explaining the lore. Thank you for being awesome and a super nerd, and then sharing that nerdiness with the rest of us nerds. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, awesome. Nerds unite. And thank you so much for the compliment. All right, I'm going to go do a bonus episode. I will see you on the other side if you're part of that group. And if not, I will see you next time as we dig into the ramifications of Bilbo's surprise ending to the party. So can't wait for that. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and make sure to fill those corners after your meals, because you can always eat more yummy food. Maybe that's not the healthiest thing to do. All right, see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. If you'd like to learn more about other fantasy worlds, check out my other podcasts, The Elder Scrolls Lorecast, The Witcher Lorecast, and more at robotsradio.net. If you'd like to reach out, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a note on Twitter at robots_radio, or join our amazing community on the Robots Radio Discord. There are links in the show notes, or just search Robots Radio Discord, or find the link on robotsradio.net. I'll see you next time.
Why aren't you eating right? Because eating right is hard? Because it isn't. Kevin Hart fixed it 4 damn years ago with The One. The One is Vita Hustle's game-changing, meal-replacing super shake. Inspired by Kevin Hart's passionate belief that we all have the right to eat right. Kevin Hart is referring to himself in the third person because he's fired up. Because The One just passed 5 million super shakes sold. 5 million. Just a quick gut-healthy glass of The One gives you all the proteins, all the greens, and all the vitamins and more. One shake, no chaos. Listeners get 20% off their first purchase at VitaHustle.com. Go to VitaHustle.com. That's VITA Hustle.com.